utopia, take away the economy from those who rigged it. As I see it, class warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. And of course, good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to the world listening to our signals via the magic of the internet, formerly known as the ARPANET, created by who? We the people, you the people, created by us, now controlled by the billionaires. Folks, we are going to have a great show for you today. But before we get started, guess what? We must go to the studio with the geniuses, my good brothers, El Senor Howard Reynolds and Jacques Van Bebber. Good morning, guys. How you guys doing this morning?
Yes, I have returned. I'm back beside my good friend Jack here. And, you know, I didn't prepare for today's show. I did not.
You did not prepare for today's show. Oh, my God. But let me give you a joke. I forgot to ask Jack this morning if you were there, and I'm like, when I do this opening, I hope Jack doesn't say, "Oops, I'm here by my lonesome again."
I was out doing some freelance work yesterday, so that's where I was. But I was listening. I heard the transition. I heard the opening, and it was all good. And I got to say, I didn't prepare the elements for today's show from getting from Arnie to you, and Jack did that. He even picked out some good music too. So yeah, this guy, I'm telling you, I could not run this place without him.
Brother Jack.
He's like my right hand, and my right hand man.
I thought you were testing me.
And speaking of right hand men, well, it looks like Elon Musk is going to step down out of Doge.
Oh, I'm going to cry.
I am going to cry too, man.
His car company is tanking. You know, he didn't understand, and most people don't when they get involved with Donald Trump, that you die. You lose everything. Rudy Giuliani is a very prime case of that. Mike Pence. I mean, the list goes on. So, Elon, and I know you're not listening, but you have learned a lesson. Do not get involved with Donald Trump because you will lose everything. And there you go.
And there you go.
Hey, wait, you remember how it used to be? Oh, yeah. It used to be, and that's the rest of the story. What's the name of that guy?
Oh, Walter Cronkite.
Well, yeah, and that's the rest of the story. Anyhow, okay, Jack.
All right. Good morning, Egberto. How are you?
Good morning, Jack. How are you doing this morning, my brother?
I'm good. Okay, here we go. What happens after Trump crashes the economy? Soup lines, bread lines, workers laid off, hungry children. Is it going to send the world economy into a tailspin? This president is a menace and should be removed, along with his billionaire cabinet of cronies. The only thing I won't cry about is when the stock market crashes and the billionaires start jumping out of windows as they watch their ivory towers crumble. Damn, that concrete's hard.
I tell you what, I just don't want to be standing underneath the billionaire when he jumps out of the window. So would you please scream really loudly so I'll know you're coming? Yeah, stay away from buildings. Egberto, you have a fantastic show ahead, so tell us all about it.
Yeah, we have a great show for you today, guys. The first 20-something minutes of it is an interview I did with a stock finance guy, stock kind of guy who ran a trading thing in New York. And I picked him up on Substack a few months ago. And I want to play the interview that we did with him. Very important stuff we talk about with regards to the tariff, etc. And then we'll come back and, of course, take your calls. If we don't have a lot of calls, there's another subject that I want to cover, which is the $7,000 tax that these tariffs really represent to families in here in the United States of America. But without further ado, let's get busy with the interview. And I tell you, folks, I want to talk this stuff because I want Americans to understand what's happening here. Donald Trump took a viable economy, a strong economy, and dumped it in and destroyed it in less than 10 weeks. There's something about if something is real, how can one person do that? We'll talk about that, but let's go ahead to the interview and then we'll come back on that, brothers and sisters. What's wrong with me? I should say sisters and brothers. Anyway, let's get busy.
Welcome to another edition of what I'm going to start calling the Weems Show, Willie Show on Egberto Politics and Right. Hey, Mr. Marlon Weems, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. As I said earlier, this is getting into my wheelhouse. So, unfortunately, on the bad side, in terms of what I kind of know a little bit about.
Let me first kind of preface it this way. Marlon Weems was formerly a stockbroker, a money manager, all those big things that you hear in Wall Street, the things that these guys like to pass off as they are special about doing, Marlon did it. So he understands all that's going on right now. Marlon, first of all, why did Donald Trump somehow believe that he could do what he's doing with tariffs and it wasn't going to have this explosive effect on the stock market? And it's not just today. This decline has been precipitous from the time people had a feeling that this was going to be real.
Exactly. Let me clarify. I wasn't a stockbroker per se. What I did was I headed up when I was working in New York. I headed up an algorithmic trading desk. Some people call it program trading, quantitative, whatever. And so my clients were people like, state pension funds, the big California funds, but also corporate clients like Microsoft, Walmart, and the like. I used to manage buyback programs for guys like that. So, a pretty big cross section of like what I would call global market participants, right? Now, to answer your question, Egberto, scholars are going to be asking, trying to figure that out probably for decades, because none of this makes any kind of sense unless you're in like a delusional bubble, like people, mega-centric people tend to be look, we all have our bubbles that we're in, this being one of them, but some bubbles have better information or more reality in them than others. And these people are operating in a world where up is down and left is right and nothing makes sense. And then what happens is they convince themselves that they know what they're doing. And now what you're seeing is they've stepped out into the real world. And, this is the FAFO stage of, what's going on.
Sadly, these are people that are less than mediocre. The entire from Trump right down to his administration, these are people that are less than mediocre. In order to cover that, they in an infantile manner try to make themselves believe that some of their problems was caused by diversity, equity, and inclusion, not realizing that they are the result of us not having a strong implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that kind of mediocrity or below mediocrity could only exist if all the participants in our country were not given that opportunity to actually excel. Now what we have, or, you mentioned something there, Marlon, that is so important. You said they have started to believe what they speak. And given that what they spoke was nonsense, implementing nonsense, did you see the formula that they used to come up with a tariff on a per country basis? It is important for Americans to understand the ineptitude, the lack of seriousness that we are looking at in this entire process.
It is, when I ran across that this morning, and it appears that somebody just dropped this in the chat by GPT, and I told my wife this morning, I started off by saying, this is a bunch of C-level students, and I actually stopped myself. Because the C-level student that's a passing grade. These guys are not C-level students we're dealing with. And what is so surprising to me is I listened to the Treasury Secretary Bissett. I listened to his just right after Trump, did his Rose Garden news conference. And this is a guy that knows better.
Right.
And you could just see him trying to massage around the reality he was saying the economy is solid, which runs counter to what Trump and everybody else on his team has been saying for the last 2 years. He continued by saying, well, the reason the Mag 7 stocks are going down is really because of DeepSeek, this AI system, out of China that surprised everybody. But that was what, a month ago. Okay. Well, how do you explain today? And the reason the tech sector it seems to be a surprise to them, but where do they think all these chips are coming from? Where do they think all the technology comes from that guys in the tech sector are using? It's baffling to me. I really um, and look, I disagreed from word go on the whole idea of tariffs, but I don't think anyone expected something just this off the chain. When you're talking about what, 50% tariffs on China, I mean, what do they think these countries are going to do? I'm hearing a lot of this morning. I'm hearing a lot of, well, this will bring folks to the table, and this will, maybe we'll cut a deal with the EU. Maybe we'll do this. This is not. This is like breaking into somebody's house and ransacking it, and then coming back saying, can we be friends?
Well,
It just doesn't work that way.
I want to point out that there are two thoughts in the White House. One is that because Donald Trump needs to raise a whole lot of money for reconciliation, and it has to be done within the budgetary process, not
Right.
creating new laws, that the only way that can be done is by deep cuts to Medicare or Medicaid, deep, and finding some other source of revenue, meaning cutting a lot of other things off. Here's the kicker. They figured, and this is where you talk about C-level thinking. Not even a C-level person thinks this way. This is where they believed that, well, you know what? If this tariffs work, even if we're not going to hold on to it, if just for the budgetary process, we have tariffs on for 4 months going, that we are going to give the impression that if assuming these tariffs stays at this level and assuming the purchasing stays at this level, that we will bring in X amount of dollars into the treasury. And bringing in X amount of dollars in the treasury and multiplying that over time, that gives them the legal realm under the where cloture is not needed for what they need to do in the Senate, which gives them this big budgetary tax cut that they're looking for, even if it's going to blow up in their face, even if after 4 or 5 months they say, okay, to hell with the tariffs. But the law is already in the books, So there's a whole lot of trickery that is going on here. And you putting tariffs on today can make the numbers look better, because you're not going to say, I'm taking the tariffs off in 5 or 6 months. But the next thought process that's in the White House is that, wait a minute, if we coerce the foreign countries into not retaliating severely on these tariffs, this is a new way of funding our government, like back in 19 whatever on tariffs.
Well, that's why he's saying he wants to get rid of the income tax.
Here you go. Here you go. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at the amount we collect in taxes versus the tariff rate that you would require based on the total amount of products that we import,
right,
it's 25% of our budget. So it's
but you're using math though, Egberto. They're not using like real. Remember we were kids. They had that new math. Well, this is the new math because it's not even adding up. Okay, so let's just say, and it was really interesting because Bissett actually kind of went down that road yesterday, but it's just so transparent to somebody like me that just watches this stuff.
Right.
He was talking about, the money that they were going to raise and talking about the reconciliation package, and he talked about every aspect of that reconciliation package except the tax cut. He never mentioned the words tax and cut. Okay. And I'm sitting there listening to this guy, and it was hard for him because he, from what I can tell, is a traditional Wall Street investment guy. And he's now sucked into this world of suspended disbelief where, you got dragons and dinosaurs at the same time on Earth, and all, and man riding on dinosaurs, just crazy stuff, right? So he was talking about this, but the numbers don't add up. We're talking about a $5 trillion tax cut minimum. You got Doge over here. What are they saying they've raised so far? Well, first of all, they don't even, we don't know the math. They won't show their work, right? So I think maybe what they've raised $1 trillion, if you believe them. If you believe them,
please don't put that into the ethos.
I'm just saying that's what they're saying they've done.
But the reality, it is under 25 billion total.
Oh, it's nothing. It's not much of anything. And so the math doesn't work. I don't even know how much you would have to, what level of tariff it would take to offset. Now, keep in mind though, I haven't seen this package that I guess it's with the Senate now. But what I do know was the House Budget Committee, a couple of months ago, had that wish list that had everything on it, like, just possibilities of things they could cut to get to where they needed to be. And that included mortgage interest, okay? Of course, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of these things. So it's smoke and mirrors, man. It's just smoke and mirrors.
This is something that I think Americans need to understand this. This is not, you notice when you said the Treasury Secretary spoke about how the reconciliation was going to work, and the one thing he didn't talk about was the tax cuts.
Right.
The other thing he didn't talk about was who is paying for these tariffs. And for all the MAGA folks that are listening to us right now, the MAGA folks are paying as a percentage more for these tariffs than anybody else.
Indeed.
The red states are going to pay more in tariffs than the blue states. The poor people, as a percentage, will pay more in tariffs than the wealthy people or the middle class. I want them to take a look and go to Walmart, because Walmart is filled up with things from China, which is now at 34% tariff. Go to Walmart and turn made in where? In every single product at Walmart, because that's where you shop. MAGA folks, go check it out. And now all those products will have an increase in price passed on to you because your Führer has posted a 34% tariff on China. China isn't paying that. The corporation's going to pay that and pass it right back to you. Because guess what? Even that 34% margin is not enough for these guys to cover. So your Führer can tell you anything, but you're going to pay the price. Marlon.
Well, I mean, it's pretty cynical, because if you think about it, the tariff is essentially a tax on everything that you buy.
Right.
I'm already seeing Hyundai and various car makers saying they're going to be they're already raising prices. Your $1,000 iPhone is now a $1,500 iPhone. That's why today, and this was a couple of hours ago, Apple had lost something in the neighborhood of $300 billion in market value, because where are those iPhones getting assembled and made? They're either Vietnam, Thailand, places like that. That's why you're seeing Lululemon. So you're buying some yoga pants. Guess what? They're going up. I mean, these are the countries that really it's China, Vietnam, Thailand. They got hit with some significant tariffs in terms of the percentage. So nobody escapes. But what's so cynical about it to me is that you're taxing people who are buying everyday goods to pay for a tax cut for people who do not need it.
Thank you. And
that is just,
as much as you're saying that, what irks me the most is it takes those of us doing independent journalism on Substack or on other platforms
Right.
to hammer that message in, that the people that are paying the price for this, they'll say, oh, everybody's going to pay for it. But the ones that it hurt the most are those people who are, again, those everyday MAGA folks that
Well, I
are,
mean, let's just face it. I'm not to interrupt, but you're talking about the people who are going to get the tax cut are the what 1%,
right,
right? Let's just, I mean, the 1%. It's not going to hurt them. First of all, they've already got all this stuff.
right.
They've already got all these things, and they aren't going to feel a a price. If eggs double in price, it's not going to affect them in the way that it's going to affect me and you. In fact, I was reading it. Someone was doing a calculation yesterday, because you hear about Elon Musk and this Wisconsin race. I think he dumped 26 million dollars in there, and someone just basically said, look, for a man who's worth $350 billion to blow off 25 million, that's like, that is less than me buying you a cup of coffee from Starbucks.
Absolutely.
That's the impact to his balance sheet. So they're cool with this. Of course they are. It's not really going to affect them in the same way. And if that's what it takes to get them that tax cut that's going to last for 10 years, they are more than willing to throw us all under the bus.
And sadly, the biggest problem we have is both ignorance and willful ignorance of many. Those guys at the top, they know what they're doing. That's why Bezos is sucking on the, you know what? That's why all the billionaires, look, I try to explain to folks that the middle class, the working class, we are on our own. We have to realize we're on our own, because there are a lot of we like to come under the impression and believe that there are good billionaires out there. We like to believe that. We like to believe that there are wealthy people over there, that they have a conscience and they have empathy. And I don't know where you stand on this, but I have a different value set that has proven that a fallacy to me. Let me give an example. All these powerful billionaires we know throughout this country that always give to George Soros or that like George Soros and Oprah and all these other folks that have big money, they know deep in their hearts, they know what's happening to the working class when these things pass. One would think that these are people that would look for all these progressive organizations out there that are fighting for the working class, fighting for the middle class. And they're going to say, let me invest in you guys educating people. Let me invest in you guys letting folks know what's going on. They're not doing that. In fact, what you hear from them are crickets, because, again, there are two classes in this country: the ones that set prices and the others that are, what I call the pathway to indentured servitude. And until we educate us all on this issue, the market dynamics, all of this that I personally consider a fraud, is going to remain the same. And what Donald Trump is doing, he can only do that because we've consented to him doing that.
So here's where I come down on the concept of billionaires. I mean, better or worse, we live in a capitalistic construct. I think it's I liken it to a cancer cell, that's gone out of control, right? It doesn't have to be like this, and we know that because we can look at Denmark, we can look at other countries that are
Right.
also capitalist countries, in terms of their model, and they don't have these problems that we have. They look at us and they're wondering what the hell. I mean, so having been in finance during the time that I was in that business for 30 odd years, I have been around a few billionaires. So I'll give you a comparison. And I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but I would say what we're seeing right now, Egberto, to me, is a different type of billionaire that is different than let's say the Vanderbilts, the guys in the Gilded Age, and what I would say, the Rockefellers even, they at least had enough of a conscience to be concerned about their legacy. So that's why you see all these libraries and all these, these monuments to their wealth, that they at least wanted us to think highly of them. These guys do not care.
Right.
And I'm not saying one is better. I guess I am. I'm saying that type of billionaire, if we got to have them, is better than what we have now. Is guys that apparently have not only an insatiable desire for more, but also they don't believe in democracy. They do not believe. You hit on the word, and I used this 2 or 3 years ago, and folks thought I was being a little hyperbolic. I wrote something, and I think the title of it was, "Welcome to your new feudal lords," and I was talking about the fact that billionaires and private equity, and this was like I think in 2021 maybe, were buying up all the land, buying up all the real estate. I was looking at Atlanta. At one point, one private equity firm owned something like 10% of all the houses in Atlanta. So these are different kind of guys, and I don't think we were prepared structurally for people not only to just accumulate just gross amounts of wealth, but also for them to be dangerous in the way that you see in Elon Musk. Nobody, none of the founding fathers could have conceived that the House would just abdicate and allow the richest person on the planet to get all up inside Social Security. That's just, if someone would have told you this 3 years ago, that's like Black Mirror kind of stuff.
Well, the story about the good cop and the bad cop.
They still both cops, though.
in my dealing with cops, I don't follow the good cop, bad cop thing, right? Because I think the good cop who knows about the bad cop and does nothing about it is a bad cop. Which means the billionaire who understands what the Elon Musk is doing, who understand what all these guys are doing, but they are, in order to maintain, well, and the thing about it is they don't even have to, I think there is an intrinsic fear by billionaires of the working class. And I think justifiably so, because I know you're a finance guy. I'm not. I'm just a lowly engineer.
Come on, man.
That's it.
Listen, man, my son is in school right now, majoring in computer engineering. I won't go near his homework.
Well, tell your son I love your son to death, okay? But what I'm saying is, believe in his numbers. And I've always been of the belief that if the working class realize the scam that our system many times is, the working class would rise up. And as I don't remember the name of the billionaire who came out and said, we better do things better because the pitchforks are coming up.
Let me tell you a story in that regard. This was one of the early pieces that I wrote about just the plutocracy, right? So when I was working in New York, running a trading desk, Citigroup published a piece of research. It was actually part of a series that they sent out to all their high net worth clients, and it was specifically on how to exploit income inequality.
Right.
For a long time, you couldn't find this because at some point they realized, oh, wait a minute, this is not really good. and so I actually have the research. I've had it for years. And, they talk about, all the different companies that are going to benefit. And here's the strategy. And some of the language is so just offensive. I don't mean like curse word. I mean, just like the way they're talking about the people on the opposite side of the inequality equation. But one thing that they do in all of these kinds of reports, they always have a section on risk. What are the risks to, that would disrupt this approach? And the one that always stuck with me, to your pitchfork analogy, and it's worded, I'm going to try to quote it. It's something like this. One of the biggest risks to this strategy is the fact that there is still one person, one vote. And at some point, those people, those other folks that don't have, are going to realize that there's way more of them than us, and they may very well basically bring us to heel.
Michael Moore put that
He
particular
did. He sure did.
his movie about healthcare.
That's right. He sure did.
It was,
Man, I got to tell you, when, like I said, I remember the day that we were all sitting on a trading desk, and I didn't run a gigantic desk. There were maybe a half dozen of us, including me, and then some, assistants and so on. And when one of my traders found that, and he said, "Man, look at what look at what these guys at Citigroup are saying. Can you believe?" I mean, it shocked us, and we were in that business because it was so just blatant in terms of the way they viewed the misfortune of everybody else.
and that is how being a billionaire corrupts your thinking. It's funny
So
because
I want to make clear, I'm not defending billionaires. I'm
I know,
acknowledging that they exist. And
right,
so I just kind of look at it. I don't look at LeBron James or Michael Jordan, who got to be billionaires, and we know how they became billionaires. I just don't look at them the same way as I look at Elon Musk.
but
That
I
may
would
be right or wrong. I'm just
no, no,
saying.
but let me just say this. I think it's incumbent on them, especially because of how they came to their fortune,
Sure, to
to have
prove to us that they deserve
we
what
should
they
have
have.
been hearing from all those billionaires right now. That is not who we are. That is not who we are. Oprah is silent. All of them are silent. This is not the time to be silent. But
Nope, it's
Nixon,
not.
yeah, Nixon was interesting. Everybody credits Nixon's with Medicare and all this kind of stuff, right? And
Sure.
it turns out that the only reason Nixon bit on some of the social programs he supported was to find out that these these managed care private sector institutes or
Hmm.
organizations, the way they made sure to ensure a profit was to give less service. And when he said, I have the tape that Michael Moore has on one of his movies, and in fact, I may play it today. When I'm telling you the depravity in the capitalist market, for the people on the real top, the depravity there that very few people know about is sad. But Marlon, we are coming on our time slot here.
It always goes so fast when I'm with you,
I
Egberto.
know, man, but we have great conversation. What and you're the expert here. What do we do?
I think we have to do what we're doing because the audience that we're talking to, one thing that's happening that's interesting to me is this disruption in legacy media. And you look at what MSNBC did, what a few weeks ago, where they just let go all these, Joy Reid and all these people. Well, those people are now coming to places like Substack, and that's where I am. So of course, Joy Reid, Don Lemon, um, Jim Acosta, all of these people now are on Substack. Paul Krugman, and they suck up a lot of oxygen, but they also bring their audience with them.
Right.
My hope is if we keep doing what we're doing, eventually people will start to notice, hey, whoa, those are some different voices that I hadn't heard before.
And what's
And
great is they have brought voices, they have enhanced our
sure,
voice, the voices of Dr. Weems, the voices of Egberto off the record. They've enhanced our voices because as I look at our stats, I'm like, oh, that
well,
came
that's
from,
what I mean. I'm
yeah,
starting to see it's not a surge, but it's certainly, just before I got on today, I noticed I had a message from Substack that I'm now in the top 100 rising, whatever in the business category. So, I mean, I've been on Substack 5 years, and that's just so I just sort of look at the cause and effect. I think to an extent, while they are certainly taking in a lot of the revenue that we hoped we could get, they're sort of helping to put us on the map too. And I
yeah.
think if we just keep working hard, people will start to notice.
And I think that is so important. But anyway, to my brother Marlon Weems, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. We all learn a lot whenever you're among us. So thank you so kindly for having been here on Egberto Off the Record.
Thanks for having me.
Right. Thank you, my brother.
All right. See you next time.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. Marlon has become a friend that I never met in person, but I met him on Substack. That's the platform where my newsletters emanate from. Love the guy. I want to welcome Melanie Keelan from Barcelona, Spain is on with us. We also have Glenn Ryan from Katy, Texas is on with us. Thank you for being here, Brother Glenn. We also have, of course, Jackie Campigi from Katy, Texas, I believe. She says, happy Friday. And she says, do you think businesses are going to lower prices after tariffs are lowered? Businesses won't lower prices, she says. And she's absolutely right. Want to welcome Gail Kunis on Substack from Georgia. I want to welcome, there was another one that I saw that needed to read, but apparently it scrolled off. So I won't get to that right now. One other thing I want, before I go to the calls, and I'm coming to the calls right now, but I want to mention something, and then after I take the calls out, if I have time, I'll explain it. Donald Trump represents one person, and we have a huge government. How can an economic system start to fail and be allowed to fail because of one person who is using his lack of real knowledge? I want you guys to think about this. The fragility of this economic system is one of the things that proves it's based, that I'm not talking about the economic system proper. I'm talking about the frills around the economic system is based on so little. Because from the day Donald Trump came into office, the factories that's been producing products are still doing that. The workers that are going to work every day are still going to work every day. The cars that are driving, the oil fields that are pumping, the mines that are working, nothing changed other than hot air. And if hot air can change and destroy an economy, you must ask, how real is the framing of the economy? I'm not talking about the workers and all the things that are actually occurring. Think about it. We have to go and do some deep diving into what we call the fraud that is our economic system. Let's go to Luis. Come on, Luis, line 2.
How are you?
I'm fine. Talk to me, sir.
I wanted to see if you can prove to me that these statements are true. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
You love Elon Musk. You love Donald Trump. You are a capitalist. You are a taker, and you don't tell the truth, and you're a hypocrite. Can you disprove any of those, or do you want me to explain why those statements are true?
Wait. I don't know if I understand the questions. Do it again. Maybe I'm a bit slow. Go ahead.
Okay. So you love Elon Musk and you love Donald Trump. Is this true?
Okay. I love neither.
Well, you said that you're not a totalitarianism. You don't make totalitarian statements, but that you said you love everyone.
No. Hold on.
You know, you just said it.
No. Listen to you said. Do I love Elon Musk? Do I love Donald Trump? The answer is no. The answer is no.
Okay. You said you love everybody, but then that's not true. Okay. You're a capitalist. Is that true?
No, I'm not a capitalist.
Do you support capitalism?
I support capitalism as a tool.
But do you support capitalism?
I just gave you the answer, and that's a factually based answer. I support capitalism as a tool. If you want an example, and that's what I'm saying, simplistic MAGA thinking doesn't work. You ask me, am I a capitalist? No. Do I accept capitalism? I accept capitalism as a tool because it has its place. And let me give you an example. An example is what is capitalism? when it comes to a capitalist company. It's a company who goes ahead and
Owning a
mixes
business and
resources.
money.
And after it mixes resources, it goes ahead and capitalizes these, sells them as stocks, etc. All these things that make up the capitalist system. In some markets, I think that is fine. For things that don't matter from a humane point of view, that's fine to have that system in that modal. But as to run a country as a capitalist country, that is fairly evil. But continue, sir.
But you own a business,
Yes, I do.
and
Every
then that
business.
makes you
No,
capitalist.
again, here's the thing.
And the
That is
slaves that work
no, no,
for
sir,
you.
sir. That is the problem. The problem is, and hear me. I want to say this with respect, right? What many on the right they like to do is they try to simplify things in such a manner that you can make some silly statements of if you own a business, you are a capitalist. That's not true. Okay, there are various forms of businesses. The type of business that I did own as a Willie's computer software company, that was a capitalist business, and I've written a whole lot about some of the pains that I had in the way things were priced, etc. As I grew up,
You
as
had
I
a
learned,
point.
let me finish. As I grew up and as I learned, I moved from being a capitalist into being a free enterpriser. And what it meant, it also has a social conscience in realizing that in as much as I created all these products out of my own intellect didn't come solely from me. It came from you. It came from many others who invested in a system that gave me said intellect. And as such, anybody who believes that because they formed a company or created something that they are the sole ones who should be rewarded by that, that is a form of thinking that is, again, that individualistic capitalist thinking that is simply wrong. Continue.
So you had some slaves working for you.
Well, actually, the type of company that I had depended on private contractors, and private contractors set their prices, etc. So it was more indentured servitude, I would say, but not slaves, as let's say we as employees, depending on where we are. So that's how it is. But continue. So you can try, but you're gonna lose this argument. Continue.
So you couldn't have done it without the help of others. Very much like
Absolutely not. No way. And that's my point. That is my point. Nobody is an island. Continue.
so you're just like Elon Musk is what you're saying.
No, I'm again, that you see the simplistic modal that you're trying to use, that
Yes,
is
it
why
is.
the system is a failure. Continue.
Okay, so you're saying that you worked off the backs of others to earn
Y-
your living,
Yes,
like a
I did.
capitalist.
Yes, I did. In the
Okay,
beginning, in the beginning
well,
of owning a company, that's what I did.
capitalism
Yes.
works.
Yeah. No.
So capitalism
Okay.
works.
Nobody talks about capitalism not working, sir. I mean, capitalism absolutely
Okay,
works. But the problem with capitalism
okay.
in the form, no, no, listen to what I'm saying now. The problem with capitalism as it is that it should never be I take advantage of you. An economic system should not be I take advantage of you. And what I explained in several of the books that I wrote is a pain I always felt selling a license for the invention that I had for $10,000 and Boeing having no problem buying that one license for $10,000. It always gave me pain. Wow, that's amazing. But when I realized that pricing power is what ran everything, and that the person who bought that ticket at the end ultimately pay it, the working class pays for everything. That is when my change came, when I started to unlearn the evil of what we learned in the form of business that we learned here. Continue.
So you became an oligarch along the way, correct?
No, not at all.
What dollar amount is an oligarch?
No, oligarch is not a dollar amount. Oligarch has a very specific meaning. But anyway, move on to what you want to say because I got calls that I need to take.
Okay, so you will be a taker when you start taking Social Security, correct?
No, because I paid into Social Security, and
Without
not only no, I paid into Social Security, and I would have probably paid into
an
Social Security
investment.
more than I take out. But go ahead.
So an investment. You pay into Social Security more
It's
than
not
you
an
take.
no, it's not an investment, sir. Social Security is a social contract. And again, you see the simplistic way that you guys want to build things up is a problem. But I don't have time to play the game a little bit longer. But let me just
No,
tell
your
you this.
Social
I'll
Security
stop.
does.
Lois, stop. I will entertain you on another day when I don't have a half hour thing that I played
Teachers
because
don't
I
get
would
Social
wait,
Security.
stop,
They
sir,
don't get it
stop.
because at all.
Listen, listen, listen.
Okay.
We'll play this game. I promise you, if we when I don't have a tape to play, call in and I will play this game with you. And I'm pretty sure you'll be
We
shredded.
couldn't
But
have
thank
done
you
it
very much,
without
my
a
brother.
financial
Let's go to Anthony. Come on in, Anthony.
Yeah, good morning. I just read on CNN that Trump fired the director of the National Security Agency uh,
Okay.
based on a recommendation by one of his conspiracy theorists who has
Yes,
gone
it's
on
true.
record saying that 9/11 was an inside job. So it's it's very concerning because, as you know, the NSA is the largest intelligence gathering organization in the United States. They listen into people's calls and communications every day and gather intelligence in numerous different ways. So Trump's making us less safe, and he's doing exactly what Putin has asked him to do. And then I wanted to go back. You had talked about briefly yesterday about the fact that the Republicans are pushing these new laws. What they've been pushing these new laws about having to show IDs to go vote, and I've lived that experience personally. I had a nephew that had gone homeless. He was mentally ill, and he was trying to get back on Medicaid. And it literally took me 4 months of banging my head up against the wall with the state of Texas in order to get him a Texas ID card. It was very exhausting. I, I spent hundreds of hours trying to get this done. I eventually, with some help of some close friends, I was able to make this happen. I got him his ID. I got him a passport. I got him everything. But at the end of the day, he never got his benefits back because he was struck and killed by hit and run driver.
Oh, sorry to hear that, brother.
What I'm trying to say is that there are people in our community and across the United States that simply don't have the wherewithal to have a simple ID card, and these are the people that aren't going to be able to go and vote.
You know
And
what,
that's the
Anthony,
most
I gotta
simple
go. I gotta go. But you nailed something so important. The amount of effort that you put in with your relative to get that ID. Most of the people who already like that ID don't have that investment, that social investment to do exactly what you did. Thank you for that story. And Anthony, I'm really up for time, but I want to talk to you more about these issues. Okay?
okay. All right.
Thank you, Anthony. Let's go to Patty real quick. Patty, come on in.
Yes, good morning. I just wanted to give a quick reminder that tomorrow, all across our country, people who believe in our Constitution and the foundations of our country will be stepping outside, even in small communities, to stand up for what our nation was founded on.
Thank you for that. That is a 50501 meetings, and there's a big one in Houston at the city hall. The pond. It's going to be a big thing tomorrow. So please, as Patty just pointed out, uh, engage yourself. Be engaged. Please be engaged. Thank you, Patty, for that. Anything else, real quick?
That's it. We
Thank you,
cannot
Patty.
give in advance.
Patty, I love you, girl. Thank you for making me do this. I forgot about announcing that this morning. Thank you very much. Um, Let's
Thank
go
you.
to. Thank you, ma'am. Let's go to Harry. Come on in, Harry.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Howard. Good morning, Jack. The rest of the story, that was said by Paul Harvey, not Walter Cronkite. But anyway, I'm glad to play Barr Williams. Again, he wanted to, like you said, he wants to throw the rest, Trump and Elon Musk want to throw the rest under the bus, and I'm glad Elon Musk is leading those. But what I really called about was that Canada and Mexico, for now, at least for now, are being spared the new tariffs. Now, I do know that the auto parts that come from those countries and the autos, the agreement that Trump put in to replace the NAFTA agreement, the CUSMA or the
USMCA.
yeah, those tariffs will remain in place for now. And like a person was talking about, they don't want to alienate Mexico or Canada. And I think if they put those tariffs in, as well as they're doing with China, Taiwan, India, and all these other countries, all that's going to do is crash the economy when it causes inflation, and it's going to cause us to head for a recession, as Professor Wolf was telling Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Yesterday morning.
All right, you're absolutely right. Harry, finish the call at 3 o'clock. We'll talk because I didn't have good time management today. My fault. Let me jump to Tag.
That's fine. You have to play that.
You're on Tag.
Hey, Egberto, how are you?
Good morning, my brother. Talk to me.
Yeah, the real issue with Trump's policy, he talks about wanting to cut taxes. I don't think he's going to cut taxes that affect us.
No,
by and large.
You're right.
And that's one thing that people don't seem to consider. Like if he cut tax on my retirement funds, like so I could go take some money out of my retirement fund, that'd be great. But I don't think, or if he's going to cut taxes on tips or wages, like he said, I don't see cut taxes coming in that avenue. And so that's the things that really bother me. The one guy, Lewis, I think that just called, he was hammering about capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
The real problem with capitalism for Lewis is venture capitalists. These guys that buy these huge companies and then they liquidate them, and the next thing you know, that section of our economy is gone.
Yeah.
And this is what's been happening. And then these people go overseas to replace that. Well, now all of a sudden you can't go overseas to replace that anymore.
Tag. Look, I got to go, but I just want to say that you brought up the very smart issue that needs to be said. And that is, once you bring up venture capitals or the people who move around stocks, etc., that is where the fraud exists, because these are people making money off of doing absolutely nothing. That's capitalism. Free enterprising is all the other folks that are doing things, but we'll talk about that another time. I got to go. Thank you very much, Tag. I got to get to Patrick.
Bye-bye.
You too, brother. Patrick, come on in.
I wanted to help with Luis. I actually like his phone call because you could tell that he put thought into it. It wasn't the best thought. He's not right on everything, but he put thought into it. So I appreciate that. But one thing I want to tell him is, because we're born into a capitalist society, and we didn't make the choice to be born into this. And let me give you an example. I don't agree with deforestation. I think it's a very, very bad thing for everybody involved, environment, economy, everything. But if I go into a Pizza Hut or something and I have to defecate, I have to use toilet paper because that's what society offers me. It's the same with capitalism. This society offered me a hunk of poop, and I'm trying to handle it the best that I can.
There you go. I mean, I wouldn't have said it that way, but Patrick, I couldn't have said it any better. Thank you, my brother. Let's talk at 3. All right, let's go to Brian. Come on in, Brian.
Okay, so Patrick's an Uber driver. Is he making money off the backs of others?
Patrick is not an Uber driver, but but that doesn't matter. If is Uber drivers making money off of others? No, Uber is exchanging a service for a service for cash. That's what they're doing. But when a stockbroker sells a piece of a company, they're exchanging nothing. Go ahead.
No, so that's exactly it, isn't it? You have a
No, it's
choice.
not. No, it's
You don't
not.
have to,
It's no,
you don't
it
have
is
to
not,
job for the wage. If you
brother.
don't
Brother.
like the job, you can change.
Brother, what I said
Yes.
in when I explained in my book How to Make America Utopia, I said the following: we should have a bifurcated economy, one that works on that which we speak about. That I think that's what you're alluding to, but one that acknowledges that certain things are rights, healthcare, energy, certain parts of our economy should not be governed by the rules of free markets and capitalism. And the
You need
reason why
to stop me, Karl Marx.
why
You
did
just
you
got
inter
me, Karl Marx. Oh,
why did you interrupt me? Why did you interrupt me when you complain when people do the same to you? Why did you do that? All right, I'm continuing.
because
Uh,
I limited the time.
all right,
Limited.
goodbye. All right. Anyway, let's see. What I wanted to say, folks, is I talk about a bifurcated economy. One where laissez-faire, it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect somebody's ability to stay alive, and the other piece, the part that is collective, is the part that all of us, we all need a basic income. We all need to have health care. We all need to have be able to move around, etc. So we have to start putting humanity into our economic system. And until then, we will continue to have the fights. The problem is we have too many that buy the Kool-Aid and indoctrination that's coming from the plutocrats who have they don't care about you. Too many of you care about people who care nothing about you. Okay, housing should be a right too. Exactly, Gina Scalut. And thank you, Gina Scalut, for the smart commentary in Substack. And let's see, let me pass it to the studio before we close.
Okay, Egberto. I was sitting here thinking, I see this on social media is, why you were all upset when all the government employees lost their jobs. Why are you going to be upset when we close down Tesla or, all the Tesla people lose their jobs? There's a big difference there. Tesla is a for-profit company. They don't service anybody but themselves. The government was a service. That's why we're upset about that.
Exactly.
Losing their jobs.
Jack?
Yep, KPFT, smarter than your average bear.
Anyway,
Alrighty
folks.
then.
All right, folks. Look, let me tell you, the rest of the program is at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. If you want to write me directly, complain, do whatever, go to kpft@politicsdoneright.com. kpft@politicsdoneright.com. I love you all. Don't listen to what Lewis is saying about my love, whatever. We're talking about a different kind of love for Elon Musk and runs. I love you all. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for